Welcome to the Learning Styles video. During the course of this video, we will look how learning styles aid you in a classroom. We'll also take an assessment test to see what your specific learning style is. And then lastly, look at some techniques on how you can utilize the different learning styles in your studying. To get started here, why don't we go and take a look into a classroom. It seems like one student's having a little more trouble on a test than the other. All right, pencils, pens down. The test is now over. I'm going to come by and grab your papers from you. Thank you. All right, thank you. Sorry, test is over. Okay, thank you.
What's wrong?
I studied this test for 10 days, and I still didn't know half of the test questions. How long did you study?
Well, I just took lecture notes and notes from the book, and then after every lecture I would just write a couple of note cards and I was good to go.
That sounds like a lot of work to do, though.
No, it wasn't. It actually saved me a lot of time in the long run because all my study material was already there for me.
Oh, maybe I should have done that then. Is there anything else you did to help you study?
Yeah, another good technique that I used for my learning style was that I would read the note cards out loud to myself. That way I could hear it better.
Well, what's learning style? Is that the way you learn best?
Yes, your learning style is the way you learn best. And actually, you want to think of it more as how you learn efficiently. You want to remember that you want to study a good amount of time, but you also want to study the material efficiently. Knowing your learning style will help you do that. It helps you learn the material the best way for you.
How do I figure out my learning style to help me learn better?
Great question. Let's go ahead and do a quiz to see what our learning style is. So now we're going to go ahead and take the assessment test to see what your learning style is. To get started here, we're going to need a couple of different items. Number one, you're going to need a pen or a pencil, something to write with. You're also going to need some paper, maybe not as much that's shown there on the slide, but you get the idea. You just need to have something to write your answers down on. So let's talk about the answers. When you come to the question, there's going to be a series of different questions that you have, and you will have 3 responses. You will want to pick the one that fits you best. Now I know as you're going through some of these questions, you're going to realize 1 or 2 maybe really fits you. What you want to think about is, in most situations, how would you answer that? And just pick that one as far as your answer for that specific question. So there will be 14 questions, and if you're ready to go, we'll go ahead and get started. So question number 1, you usually remember more from a class lecture when A, you do not take notes but listen very closely, B, you sit near the front of the room and watch the speaker, or C, you take notes, whether or not you look at them again. So again, you just want to kind of look at that question, look at the answers, and pick the one that most of the time is kind of going to fit you. Question number 2, you usually solve problems by A, talking to yourself or a friend, B, using an organized, systematic approach with lists, schedules, etc., or C, walking, pacing, or some other physical activity. Question number 3, you remember numbers when you can't write them down by A, repeating the numbers orally, multiple times of course, B, seeing or visualizing the numbers in your mind, or C, writing the numbers with your finger on a table or wall, and it's repetitive, just trying to make sure you remember it. And question number 4, you find it easiest to learn something new by listening to someone explain how to do it, B, watching a demonstration of how to do it, or C, trying it yourself. Question number 5, you remember most clearly from a movie, A, the characters and what they said, background noises and music, B, the setting, scenery, and costumes, or C, the feelings you experienced during the movie. Question number 6, when you go to the grocery store, you, A, silently or orally repeat the grocery list, B, walk up and down the aisle to see what you need, or C, usually remember what you need from a list you left at home. Question number 7, you are trying to remember something, and so you, A, hear in your mind what was said or the noises that occurred, your surroundings, B, try to see it happen in your mind, so trying to recreate it in your mind. Or C, feel the way it reacted with your emotions, so trying to figure out how you felt during that time to bring that memory back for you. Question number 8. You learn a foreign language best by A, listening to records or tapes, B, writing and using workbooks, C, attending a class in which you read and write. Question number 9. You are confused about the correct spelling of a word, and so you, A, sound it out, B, try to see the word in your mind, or C, write the word several different ways and several different times and see which one looks the best to you. Moving to question 10. You enjoy reading most when you can read A, dialogue between characters, B, descriptive passages that allow you to create mental pictures in your mind, or C, stories with a lot of action in the beginning because you have a hard time sitting still, and if that isn't happening, you kind of lose focus. Question number 11. You usually remember people you have met by their A, names, B, faces, and you forget their names, or C, mannerisms, motions, or anything like that that's physical. Question number 12. You are distracted most by A, noises, B, people, or C, your environment and the things that surround you. So temperature, comfort of the furniture, whatever the case may be. Question number 13. You usually dress A, fairly well, but clothes are not very important to you. B, neatly in a particular style, or C, comfortably so you can move easily and feel comfortable overall. Question number 14. You can't do anything physical and you cannot read, so you choose to A, talk with a friend, B, watch TV or look out a window, or C, move slightly in your chair or bed, kind of fidgeting around. So that was our 14 questions. So what you should have are 14 different answers or letters. So what I want you to do is now look at your answers. You're going to go ahead and add up all the A's, all the B's, and all the C's. So there's 14 different possibilities. So it could be as high as 14 A's, 0 B's, 0 C's, although that's probably very unlikely, or some combination of numbers in between there. Ultimately, what you're looking for are the number of A's, B's, and C's. Now, A's refer to the auditory learners, and that's how many of those questions you answered as an auditory learner. B is going to relate to the visual learner and how many you actually answered as a visual learner. And C is going to go ahead and relate to the kinesthetic learners. So the number that you responded to as C is going to indicate that. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is see how we can ultimately utilize this. So go ahead and take a moment to go ahead and score that up for yourself and see where you fall. If you notice that 2 are really high and 1 is really low, that's actually pretty common. So don't worry too much about that, and we'll talk more about that towards kind of the learning suggestions section of this as we go through it. So hopefully you kind of have an idea of what it is you're doing there. Now, just to kind of give you a picture idea of what we're doing, you really want to kind of think of this as if you were the visual type learner, you see it. You want information to come through your eyes. If you're an auditory learner, you want it through your ears. So you want to hear the material, and as much as possible, you need to try to get that sense going in your learning. And then kinesthetic learners, you are going to have the hardest time in kind of traditional classrooms, but there are plenty of different techniques that you can use in your studying. And what you need to do is be physical with the material. You need to be hands-on. You need to do something with those items. So we'll talk about some learning suggestions for that also. So let's go ahead and start with the visual learners. Number 1, visual learners are good at spelling, but forget names a lot of times because they can kind of see those things. Needs quiet study time, because if you imagine that the eyes are kind of the way into the brain for a visual learner, if there's something happening from an auditory sense or even a physical sense, that is really going to diminish the effect of that visual learning. So really important for them to have a quiet study time. Likes to think a while before understanding a lecture, likes color, even fashion, and understands and likes charts. So PowerPoints, such as what we're even using through this, a video is really great for a visual learner because they want to see the material, they want to see it written for them, they want to see it displayed for them, and they want to see it in front of them. So those are all kind of the characteristics of a visual learner. So let's talk about some learning suggestions for a visual learner. When you're looking, you want to create as many maps, diagrams as possible. Great thing about books nowadays in college is a lot of this is there. A lot of this is built into the textbook. A lot of this is built into a website that can kind of go along with the textbook. A lot of videos are available too. So you want to try to dig and see how much of that material is in a visual way so you can utilize that. And then a lot of instructors are using PowerPoint, Prezi, whatever the case may be, and you can utilize those also just as a way to kind of aid your studying technique. You want to outline everything. You want to really try to make certain items bold out to you or pop out to you. So it's really good to kind of take notes, but also to use different colors, maybe highlighters. You maybe have seen a student like this in your class to where they have multiple highlighters, multiple colored pens, and that's really what they're doing. They're really trying to make the material jump out to them so it catches them and they see that important items and it's something that goes through visually. Of course, you want to use flashcards, and flashcards is kind of a good example for all three of these. Flashcards for a visual learner is going to be done in just reading, seeing the material, and the kind of repetition of that is really going to be a great learning style for them. So that's the visual learner. Let's go ahead and jump to the auditory learner. Auditory learner again too is hearing. So we want as much of the material going through the ears as possible. So auditory learner usually reads slowly because that's more of a visual thing, but you'll notice that they read out loud, and that's actually a good technique for them. They're not afraid to speak in class, and they like oral reports because that's something that they can constantly hear and something that actually is a good thing for their memorization. They're good at explaining. They remember names pretty well because you ultimately hear those. They notice sound effects in movies. So a lot of times people are going to be noticing just the characters, whatever the case may be. But these type of learners, an auditory learner is going to notice like the little things as far as music in the background, sound effects that are happening along with the scene. And a lot of times they'll bring that up. And if you're not an auditory learner, you may not even recognize those, but they do. And they enjoy music, and they enjoy even listening to music when they study. And a lot of times that's kind of a way to aid in the studying. Not so much that it's a distraction, but it's just kind of getting the brain going, having the auditory senses really kind of firing, and then that will allow them to kind of read maybe a bit better or even study or memorize a bit more too. But again, everyone's a bit different, so you got to kind of take it slowly with that and see what works the best for you. And then again, going back to the flashcards, an auditory learner would want to use a flashcard, but as a visual learner wanted to see them and read it, an auditory learner is going to need to say them out loud, and they're going to need to hear it. So they're going to say the word, the definition. They're going to look at or say the year and what happened during that year, or the grammar, the word, and what that definition is, whatever the case may be. The important thing for them is to actually hear it. So flashcards work for auditory learners, but they need to hear the material. So that kind of brings us to learning suggestions. So when we look at learning suggestions, we want to try to do word association. Mnemonic devices. Everyone uses mnemonic devices. Our ABCs were learned as a mnemonic device to where it was a rhythm, and that's how you remembered to say your ABCs back when you were a child. It's the same idea, kind of figuring out some way or game to kind of get your memory going and connecting that through sounds. So that's important too. Videos are good for auditory learners because they get to hear all the material. The scene isn't as important, but the hearing is. Lectures are extremely important for an auditory learner because they need to hear the material gone over by the instructor. They're not going to be as effective just reading the material or even looking at the PowerPoints at home if they're posted on Blackboard or anything like that. So they need to be there. They want to repeat information as much as possible out loud, so again, they can kind of hear that. And auditory learners do really well in good group discussions or group studies, because what they're able to do is talk material over, but more importantly, hear it from a lot of different people and constantly get that repetition. So that's a good thing to kind of look at if you're an auditory learner. Okay, lastly, we're going to look at the kinesthetic learners. So again, these are the hands-on people. These are the people that want to be physical with the material. They want to touch it, manipulate it, they want to play with it. So kinesthetic learners are usually good at sports. They're usually very active. They want to be outside because they want to be doing something. They cannot sit for long periods of time, and this is kind of what causes them some difficulty when it comes to school, because you talk about 1.5 to 3 hour lectures that you're sitting for, and sometimes that's just not going to be a good style for a kinesthetic learner. So one kind of suggestion I have for maybe a schedule for a kinesthetic learner is to break that time up. Maybe you take a class and you have an hour break, and then you take another class maybe with an 1.5 hour break. It's just so you don't have constant back-to-back sitting periods, because that could be tough for a kinesthetic learner. And once they kind of turn off from a physical standpoint, nothing else is really going to happen at that point. So the learning is really going to be diminished. So you want to think about that. Like adventure movies, like adventure books, things like that. They like to build, create. These are the type of people that probably got every toy on Christmas and then tore it apart just so they could try to rebuild it. I was that type of person. Sorry, Mom. I know I broke every toy I had. But that's what you're talking about. You're talking about trying to be hands-on and learning the material from actually touching and playing it. So let's look at some of the learning suggestions here. Again, you want to study in short blocks. So maybe an auditory or a visual learner can go for 3 hours to study. Not going to work so well for a kinesthetic learner. Maybe it's like a 10, 20, maybe 30-minute period, and then they go ahead and take a walk, or they do something else to where they get up and they physically move. So you constantly have to have those study breaks, and that's very important for a kinesthetic learner. They're going to do really well in a hands-on setting. So of course that's going to be labs. It's going to be any classes in which you're very physical with the material. So it's important to try to, as much as possible, do that. Although in an academic setting and academic classes, that's not always possible. Visit items. So visit museums, visit fields, visit anything in which you're trying to learn about, because that is the way to be kind of with and play with the material. So if it's an art history class, if it's a music history class, music appreciation, then go and be with the material. Go to museum, like I said, go to a play, go to even a concert, just so you can kind of be with the material, because that a lot of times will help too. Study with others, and then also try to create games for yourself. So that goes back to the flashcards that I was using with the other two learning styles also. So when you talk about flashcards are going to be the ones in which you're going to not so much be reading or hearing them, although that's an important part. It's the playing of games. So maybe you and a friend are going to see how quickly you can go through and get correct answers. Or you're going to create some type of game to where if you can get everyone right in, I don't know, like 2 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, then that gives you a reward of being able to go outside or something like that. So you want to try to make a game of it, and that's how you're being physical with the material. There's also the idea of mind maps where you create, it's almost like brainstorming, where you kind of create an idea and you create one thing from there, kind of branching out from that one item or fact that you need to know. And a kinesthetic learner isn't learning so much from reading that later, although that does happen. They're more learning from the fact of kind of writing it and creating it. So you want to try to do that as much as possible. So that's the important parts of kind of the auditory, the visual, and the kinesthetic learners. Hopefully you kind of realized which one you were and kind of got a little better sense of what you can kind of do with the material and what you can do in order to study that.
Well, I think I'm an auditory learner, so I think I'm going to study with those techniques, and then probably, hopefully, I'll score better.
I'm an auditory learner too. Maybe we should study together.
Okay.
As you saw in the class, knowing your learning style can greatly enhance your studying and your success. So as we close this video, I'd like to stress 3 different things. Number 1, the length of time you study isn't as important as how you study. So knowing that learning style and studying efficiently is very important. Number 2, using the techniques of your learning style as opposed to just trying to study as you normally do can really enhance your studying and your retention and your memory of the material in a test or even in your class. And lastly, number 3, I'd like to just say that a lot of you may find that you actually fall into a couple different categories on the learning style. And what I would say is that's actually pretty common for you to have 1 or 2 different learning styles that you're very strong in. What you want to do is kind of see which technique and learning style works best for you overall, number 1, but number 2, for different specific situations or classes, even subjects. So make sure you kind of try them out, see which one works best for you, and then ultimately utilize the one that's best for you. I really hope that you found this video informative, and I encourage you to visit some of the other videos on this website to help in your college success.